This weekend, we are poised for a Premier League encounter at Old Trafford. Manchester United will be looking to host their neighbours in the recent Manchester Derby. So the Manchester Derby has a wide range of history, with the red side of Manchester having the better luck in the Derby. During the time of Sir Alex Ferguson as the manager of Manchester United went into every Manchester derby as favourites, and Manchester United was one of the best teams in English Premier League. Manchester United won majority of the derbies, and when you look at history, you'll see that Manchester United have won more derbies because by then Manchester City had not reached the level they are in now. Sir Alex Ferguson formulated a team that went ahead to win the treble, the first treble in English football. But it seems their neighbours from the blue side of Manchester upset their ego last season by winning a treble even better. So the Manchester Derby is going to be a thrilling match that we are going to analyze and preview today. So Manchester City, a club that had been in ruins, finally managed to get back to the top of English football. And currently, this is the best club run by the best manager in world football in Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola has molded a team that is so strong and so practically equipped, and with a strong personnel that beats majority of the teams it faces. Manchester United therefore have an uphill task. Pep Guardiola has instilled his philosophy of possession-based football at Manchester City. The philosophy of possession-based football that Guardiola has implemented at Manchester United involves the phases of building play from the back through the use of quick one-touch passing in breaking the opposition's press. In addition, Manchester City are quite effective in moving from their defensive third into their attacking thirds. The ability to create numerical superiority in the attacking areas and quick movement and interchange of position is also a huge strength. Complemented with their excellent counter-pressing of the ball and their high-intense pressing, they are the established team currently in the league as well as in Europe. So Manchester United are not just facing any opponent, they are facing one of the most tactically drilled teams and one of the most efficient drilled teams. However, Manchester United in the recent two games against Manchester City have showcased a way in which they were able to limit Manchester City. Now, the FA Cup game between Manchester City and Manchester United saw Manchester City win the FA Cup. But that game was quite interesting since Manchester United actually beat Manchester City on XG and had the better possession as well as limited Manchester City. But before we start our analysis, do not forget to like, share and subscribe. So, Manchester City being a tactically drilled team, we're going to see how both of these teams line up against each other. We're going to understand the key players for each team. But before we start this, let's look at the head-to-head. Looking at the head-to-head, you can clearly see that Manchester City has won 4 out of the previous 6 derbies, while the latter 2 have been won by Manchester United. No draws have been recorded in the derby. Also, we're going to now understand how Pep Guardiola sets up his Manchester City and who will be the key players for this team ahead of the derby. And I've come up with a range of players that will be key. The first one is Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker will be tasked in marking Marcus Rashford and Højlund. Phil Foden, the boy from Manchester, will be tasked with the creativity of the Manchester City attack. Rodri, his ability to be the hub of the team will be quite crucial, especially in tight man-marked positions by Manchester United, as well as the sensation Erling Haaland, who will be tasked to lead the line. Now, on to Manchester United. So Erik ten Hag has created a team that can be able to play his game. Though Manchester United have not been quite efficient of late, but they can take up their recent 2 victories through this game. The first player who will be quite crucial is Onana, and mainly during the build-up phase. His excellent passing range will be quite important. Harry Maguire will also be quite important, especially dealing with Haaland. His physicality and his reading of the game will be important. Bruno Fernandes, his ability to link the front two will be quite important, especially facing a team that will have more of the ball. And the importance of Højlund and Rashford in capitalizing the few chances that Manchester City will present to them will also be quite crucial. So Pep Guardiola has been one of the best managers, and beating him is not a walk in the park. The Manchester United have found out that in most games they've faced Manchester City. We're going to see why it is so difficult to beat Pep. So in this video, you can clearly see how Guardiola likes to set his team up, so he can decide to build with a 4. And when an opponent decides to push a player to press one centre back, the goalkeeper moves up and plays as a centre back, with the other centre back, mainly John Stones or Akanji, moving in midfield. This gives Manchester City an extra player in midfield, enabling them to quickly outmaneuver the opponent and attack the backline. Now, teams have decided to sit off Manchester City because of this case, so you'll find their fullback starting out wide. But during this phase, when they have progressed with the ball, rather than having a centre-back playing alongside Ruben Diaz, as most teams would, and one player picking up Rodri, Manchester City has devised ways of using wide overloads to beat this. Having an extra midfielder enables them to always have an extra man in midfield who can receive the ball and make runs in half spaces, something that Pep has perfected at Manchester City. Now, so these are when teams are lining themselves up in a 4-4-2. So Pep sometimes like to push his fullbacks quite high and wide, and this is aided by one of the defensive midfielders playing in a staggered position, with Bernardo Silva or Kovacic dropping deep to receive the ball, drive with the ball in space, something that Manchester City do quite often by dropping their midfielders and their forwards. So even employing a tight man marking system on Rodri will not work. So even if your midfield decides to sit on to the 2 midfielders ahead of the 2 midfielders in the half spaces, the centre backs will have time on the ball. But Pep is not afraid to push Ederson further up the pitch to play as an extra centre back, playing the ball to a centre back who can now move down the wide areas, draw in a player, and release a fullback. Now Manchester City can create the overloads that they like to create all over the pitch. The Guardiola system is a strong system because they are able to create weaknesses however you want to stop them. Now, let's look at more progressive phases of play. So in these phases of play, you can see if a team arranges itself in a 4-4-2 ready to press Manchester City, and Manchester City like to build through the middle, you'll see John Stones or Akanji invert in midfield earlier on, and the Manchester City will form a back 3, and this back 3 will enable them to beat the first line of pressure and get their ball into the more dangerous midfielders in Stones and Rodri. Also, the dropping in Haaland is quite effective since he can link up play with the 2 attacking 10s in the half spaces, and they might also slip the wingers down the channels. So when teams decide to sit on these 2 pivots, Pep also has a way of countering this. And this is how Pep does this if a team decides to create overloads in midfield. He spreads his centre backs quite wide and asks them to hold on to the ball till they draw an opponent, while a midfielder comes out to receive the ball, something that we saw De Bruyne do in the FA Cup. Haaland is not also afraid to drop so deep to receive the ball and play it back to Stones. And Stones and Rodri are capable of playing the balls in spaces vacated by the centre-back. This gives Manchester City a lot of strength, especially when teams try to go man-to-man with them, since they also have technically gifted players. So, what happens when teams decide to press the two pivots? You'll see a pivot playing in a staggered position with one coming short while the other pushing up. This staggered position enables Manchester City's pivots to always have a man in the hole who can receive the ball in space and advance with the ball. Remember one key strength of Manchester City, they have good technical players on the ball, therefore they are not afraid to receive the ball under pressure, something that John Stones and Rodri do quite often. So against the match against Arsenal, Manchester City tried to overload the pitch with at least 6 players. And they might try to do this against Manchester United. The fullbacks were the only wide players, but now this enabled Manchester City's midfield to have free midfielders, since even a team that employs a 4-man midfield could not and cannot be able to defend against this midfield overload. But Arsenal were quite effective in inverting their fullbacks and going man-to-man in the back so that they can neutralize this strong midfield overload created when Guardiola decides to use his wingers in the inside channels. But this also frees up the fullbacks in Walker and Guardiola, and Walker precisely will like to push forward with the ball, and this might enable him to play threaded through balls for the runs of Foden and also link up with the likes of Bernardo Silva down the right. But this can also be a blessing for Manchester United, since if Manchester City lose the ball in this position, then United are in for a counter. So Manchester City also are quite efficient in drawing opponents to press them higher up the pitch. And they know this because they know they have a competent goalkeeper on the ball. And this is aided by also their 2 strong centre backs. The centre backs are able to hold on to the ball till they draw up an opponent to come out and press them. And when an opponent comes out and presses them, then spaces open up in midfield. And Manchester City are not afraid to be patient with their build-up, since they like to build the play quite slowly. The main aim of this build-up shape is to always ensure that they are able to move opponents on all the faces of the pitch. The back 3 system is quite effective for them, since the wide centre backs are the ones who hold on to the ball most of the time, drawing opponents and opening gaps in midfield. In some instances, wingers such as Jack Grealish come short, and this enables them to come short, receive the ball, and this creates openings and spaces in midfield where their 2 attacking 10s and the pivots can link up and progress the ball through the middle. So this is how Guardiola has set out his system, a system whereby he's able to manipulate opponents with the principles and tenets of positional play, enabling him to always create weaknesses for his opponents on all faces and all parts of the pitch. But if you're quite strong in the counter-attack, which is so difficult to do against Manchester City, you can get at them, but it is an uphill task beating Manchester City in their game, and it's something that we'd like to see how Erik ten Hag will use Marcus Rashford in this kind of instance. But as I had promised, Manchester United are not quite. So let's look at what Ten Hag does. In the previous 2 games against Manchester City, Ten Hag has come out on top, though the results have not been quite on his side. So in the FA Cup final, Manchester City lined up in a 4-2-3-1, same did Manchester United. And the main aim that both teams we saw is that both teams had evenly possessed the ball on all the 3 faces of the pitch, meaning that Manchester United limited Manchester City from penetrating their defensive third. In the game where Manchester United won 2-1, also in that game, Manchester United limited Manchester City to only have the ball in the central positions of the pitch. So how can Ten Hag beat Manchester City? So you know very well that teams like to play from the back by dropping both centre backs alongside the goalkeeper. However, this will be quite detrimental if you employ that in Manchester City, because of their 4-4 press will enable them to win the ball because of their aggressive man-marking press. So how does Ten Hag beat this press? So Ten Hag has come up with a way of dropping in a centre-back in midfield and having the fullback hold the wide area, using Andre Onana as a third centre-back. Onana is quite excellent on the ball and is not afraid to do so. In some instances, he even drops both of his centre-backs in midfield so that he might have as many as 6 players in the middle of the park. So in this case, if Manchester City decides to go for the wide fullbacks, then the 2 central defenders will progress the ball from midfield. Note this, you need centre-backs who are quite confident on the ball. Here, Manchester United are building from the back. Varane and Lisandro Martinez are acting as the pivots, with Casemiro playing ahead of them. So this is ensuring that Casemiro can receive the ball in space, and teams struggle with how they can press Manchester United in this kind of format. We also saw this at Inter when Onana had time and space on the ball because of the midfield overload generated by Manchester United. So Onana is quite crucial in playing balls over the top for the runs of Højlund and Marcus Rashford. Alternatively, he can also play the ball high up the pitch, where they can win the second balls and immediately use this transition phase and convert it into attack, something that Manchester United are not afraid of doing. Alternatively, Onana can also pick up players in the half spaces, the likes of McTominay and Bruno Fernandes pushing high up the pitch. However, Pep Guardiola is not afraid to push one of his centre-backs in midfield to go man-to-man at the back, because Manchester City have competent players all over the pitch. You should also understand the use of side overload, something that Manchester United can employ. Since Manchester United will not have majority of possession in the game, their main focus will be how they will move out of possession, and this is how they will do this. So Manchester City might decide to push Ederson high up the pitch during build-up. This might see Stones moving in midfield with the 2 number 10 so that Manchester City can form their usual box midfield. So Manchester United in the FA Cup final decided to start Anthony and Marcus Rashford quite narrow, rather than them pressing the fullbacks. This enables them to overload Manchester United's midfield and prevent Manchester City from progressing with the ball down the middle. And in these phases, they can set pressing taps, win the ball, and immediately launch quick counter-attacks. It's something that Manchester United did in the FA Cup game. We've done an analysis on that on our channel. Now, in deeper phases of play, Manchester United can move to a 4-2-3-1 system with their wingers playing close together with Bruno Fernandes. Their main aim is to limit Manchester City's central progression, and their fullbacks should be quite competent enough to go 1v1 against Manchester City. In the limited time that Manchester United have the ball, they should be quite proactive and move into a more 3-5 system to have Rashford in 1v1 situations. So Ten Hag and Pep have worked together at Bayern Munich, and they're managers who know each other and have worked with each other. So this game is going to put Ten Hag in a very tight position ahead of the derby. You've seen how it is so difficult to break down Manchester City, and it's actually so difficult to beat them. But Ten Hag needs to come up with a solution, and the players need to step up so that they can get a result against Manchester City. Leave your predictions down below about the game. If you've enjoyed this analysis, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.